I didn't ask questions when Marcus tied the silk around my eyes. The fabric smelled like his cologne, cedar and something darker I couldn't name. Trust me, he whispered against my ear. His breath was warm, familiar. After 12 years of marriage, I knew that tone. It meant he'd planned something elaborate. I let him guide me to the car, my heels clicking against our driveway. The passenger seat felt different in darkness. Every vibration from the road traveled through my body. Marcus drove in silence, his hand occasionally finding my knee. The city sounds faded. We turned onto gravel, then dirt. I counted the minutes, 37 from our house to wherever we were going. Trees scraped the car windows. The engine stopped. "We're here," Marcus said. His voice had changed. Tighter, excited. I heard him get out, walk around the car. When he opened my door, cooler air rushed in. Pine and decay. Something old. He helped me stand. My heels sank slightly into soft earth. We walked 23 steps, I counted, before he stopped me. "There are stairs," he said. "Hold the railing." Wood creaked under my feet. A door opened with a groan that spoke of abandonment. Inside, the air was thick with dust and something else. Wax. Candles. Marcus positioned me carefully, his hands on my shoulders. I felt fabric behind my knees. A couch, old and worn. "Sit," he said. I sat. The cushions exhaled decades of neglect. "I'm here," Marcus said, his voice now coming from somewhere across the room. "But tonight, you're not for me." My heart stopped, then started again, harder. Footsteps approached. Not Marcus's footsteps. Fingers touched the silk around my eyes. Not Marcus's fingers. These were rougher, unfamiliar. The blindfold slipped away. Candlelight flickered across dusty walls. 7 men stood in a semicircle around me. The one who'd removed the blindfold was closest. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that held mine without apology. Marcus leaned against the door frame, watching. His expression was unreadable in the dancing light. "This is Megan," Marcus said to the strangers. His voice carried a note I'd never heard before. Pride mixed with something else. Possession, maybe. The dark-haired man extended his hand. I took it, felt calluses against my palm. "I'm Rowan," he said. His voice was whiskey and smoke. The others introduced themselves. Soren, Callum, names that blurred together as my pulse hammered in my ears. They were younger than Marcus, older than me, confident in the way men get when they know exactly what they want. One of them had left a key card on the mantel, hotel plastic catching candlelight, evidence of planning, of coordination. This wasn't spontaneous. "Your husband told us about you," Rowan said, settling beside me on the couch. The others remained standing, patient as predators. I looked at Marcus. He nodded once. "What did he tell you?" I asked. Rowan's smile was slow. "That you're curious, that you've been talking about, expanding your experiences." Heat crawled up my neck. Those late-night conversations with Marcus, wine-loosened confessions about fantasies I'd never expected to voice. He'd listened, remembered, planned. "And if I say no?" I whispered. "Then we leave," Rowan said simply. No questions asked, but I could feel the weight of 7 gazes, the electric tension in the dusty air. Marcus's eyes on me from across the room, waiting. I didn't say no. Rowan's lips brushed my ear. "Close your eyes," he whispered. I did. Hands touched me. Gentle. Exploratory. Not just Rowan's hands. The boundaries I'd lived within for 35 years dissolved like sugar in rain. Marcus's presence filled the doorway. I felt him watching, felt his attention like heat on my skin. This was his gift to me, his orchestration. The knowledge should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like permission. Time became elastic. Candlelight flickered behind my closed eyelids. Voices murmured approval, encouragement. Someone's thumb traced my collarbone. Another hand found the small of my back. I opened my eyes once and caught Marcus's gaze. His face was flushed, intense. He looked like a man witnessing something he'd dreamed about for years. The old couch creaked beneath shifting weight. Dust motes danced in the amber light. Someone had left a receipt on the coffee table. Evidence of their dinner before coming here, before this moment that would split my life into before and after. What happened next belongs in shadows and whispered breath. The camera turns to the window, where moonlight painted the abandoned estate silver. Inside, boundaries crossed and reformed, lines redrawn in darkness. When it was over, silence settled like dust. 7 strangers became 7 men again, gathering their things, their confidence intact. They'd given me something I hadn't known I needed, the feeling of being desired not just by one man, but by many, chosen, wanted. Rowan squeezed my hand before he left. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. The others filed out one by one, leaving me and Marcus alone in the flickering candlelight. The receipt fluttered to the floor. Marcus didn't speak until we were back in the car. The silk lay crumpled in my lap. No longer a blindfold, just fabric now. The spell was broken, but the memory burned bright. "How do you feel?" he asked, starting the engine. I stared out the windshield at the abandoned estate shrinking in our headlights. "Different," I said. It was the only honest answer. He reached over and took my hand. His fingers were warm, familiar. "Good different?" I thought about it, about the way those men had looked at me, wanted me, about Marcus watching from the doorway, orchestrating my pleasure like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Yes," I whispered. The drive home passed in comfortable silence. Marcus's thumb traced circles on my knuckles. The radio played softly, jazz that matched the rhythm of my still racing heart. As we pulled into our driveway, Marcus finally spoke again. "You exceeded all my expectations," he said. The words should have made me feel accomplished. Instead, they made me hungry. Not for food or sleep or the familiar comfort of our bed. Hungry for more. "What if next time," I said, surprising myself with my boldness, "it wasn't in some abandoned place? What if it was somewhere public?" Marcus's hand stilled on mine. In the dashboard light, his eyes were wide. "Public? Not completely, but a hotel, downtown, where we might see people we know." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Where there's risk." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, slow, dangerous, full of promise. "I'll make some calls," he said. 3 days later, Marcus handed me a key card over breakfast. The plastic was warm from his pocket, embossed with the logo of the Meridian Hotel downtown. "Tonight," he said. "Penthouse suite." I turned the card over in my fingers. "How many?" "Does it matter?" It didn't. That was the revelation that had been growing inside me since the estate. The specific number mattered less than the feeling. Being wanted, being chosen, being the center of attention, in a way that had nothing to do with being a wife or daughter or any of the other roles I'd worn for decades. "What about," I gestured vaguely, meaning our neighbors, our friends, the careful life we'd built. "The elevator goes directly to the penthouse. Private entrance from the parking garage." Marcus had thought of everything. "But there's still risk. The hotel staff will see us. Other guests. Risk." The word sent electricity down my spine. That evening, I dressed carefully. The black dress Marcus had bought me for our anniversary. The one that made me feel dangerous. Red lipstick, heels that clicked confidently against hardwood. Marcus watched me in the mirror. "You're beautiful," he said. But beautiful wasn't enough anymore. I wanted to be irresistible, unforgettable. The drive downtown felt different than the drive to the estate. More charged, more deliberate. We weren't sneaking away to some hidden place now. We were walking into the heart of the city, claiming our space. The Meridian's valet took our keys. The concierge nodded politely. Normal interactions that felt loaded with secret meaning. In the elevator, Marcus pulled me close. "Last chance to change your mind." I kissed him instead of answering. When the doors opened, I walked into the penthouse first. The penthouse was full of strangers, different men than before, but the same hunger in their eyes. City lights glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers. This time felt different, more sophisticated, more dangerous. These weren't men Marcus had found in some online forum. These were his colleagues, his friends, men who knew our real names, our address, our life. I recognized Dr. Harrison from Marcus's law firm, James from the country club, men who'd made polite conversation with me at dinner parties, who'd never looked at me the way they were looking at me now. The receipt from the estate had been anonymous, forgettable. This was different. This had consequences, but I couldn't stop. Didn't want to stop. The hunger that had awakened in that dusty, candlelit room had grown into something consuming. I was a different woman now, one who took what she wanted without apology. What followed was inevitable. The lights dimmed, the jazz grew softer, and I became the center of their universe for 2 hours that felt like forever. Later, much later, Marcus and I lay in the king-sized bed. The other men had gone. The penthouse was quiet except for the distant hum of the city below. "We can't go back," I whispered into the darkness. "I know," Marcus said. "People will find out. They'll talk." "I know. Your job, I resigned yesterday," he said quietly. "Gave my notice. Told them we were relocating for your career." I turned to stare at him. "You what?" "This changes everything, Megan. You think Dr. Harrison isn't going to tell his wife? You think James won't mention it to someone at the club?" Marcus's voice was matter of fact. "We need to start over somewhere new." The price of our choices settled over me like a heavy blanket. Our house, our friends, our carefully constructed life, all of it would have to go. But as I lay there, in the expensive sheets, surrounded by the scent of expensive cologne and expensive regret, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry. I'd found something in those rooms. First dusty and candlelit, then sleek and dangerous. I'd found a version of myself I never knew existed. A woman who took risks, who demanded pleasure, who refused to apologize for her desires. The receipt from our old life was already crumpling, ready to be discarded. I was already waiting for whatever came next. The phone buzzed against the marble countertop, pulling me from my reverie. Marcus's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity won. "Sarah?" His voice was strained, unfamiliar. "We need to talk." I traced patterns on the cool surface with my fingertip. "Do we?" "I know about the credit card charges, the hotel, He paused, and I could hear him swallow. "The boutique purchases." A smile played at my lips. Of course he'd noticed. Marcus tracked every penny like a bloodhound, categorizing our life into neat spreadsheets and monthly reports. "And? What's happening to you? This isn't who you are." But that was where he was wrong. This was exactly who I was. I'd just been too buried under years of beige walls and predictable routines to see it. Too content with being the good wife, the reliable partner, the woman who never asked for more than she was given. "Maybe it's who I've always been," I said, watching my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me had secrets in her eyes now. "Maybe you just never bothered to look." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller. "I want to understand. Can we meet somewhere? Talk properly?" I considered it. The old Sarah would have rushed home immediately, apologetic and eager to smooth things over. Would have explained away her newfound boldness as some sort of temporary madness, a midlife crisis to be managed and contained. But the woman I'd become in those shadowed rooms, first with flickering candles, then under neon lights, she had different ideas. "I'm not ready to come home yet," I said finally. "Then where? When?" I looked around the hotel suite I'd booked for the night, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that sparkled with infinite possibility. Tomorrow, there would be decisions to make, consequences to face. Tomorrow, I might have to choose between the life I'd built and the woman I'd discovered. But tonight belonged to me. "When I'm ready," I said, and ended the call. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of potential. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle I'd ordered from room service, something I never would have done before. Too expensive, too indulgent, too much. Now it tasted like freedom. Outside, the city hummed with its own secrets, its own stories of transformation and desire. Somewhere out there, other women were discovering their own hidden selves, stepping out of shadows they hadn't even realized they were living in. I raised my glass to the window, to them, to myself. The night was young, and so was I.